Feel the neon pulse of the city as we navigate the high-stakes world of modern life and digital dreams. This is where high-tech visuals meet raw, ancient emotions in a burst of cinematic light. Click subscribe now and keep your finger on the pulse.
She said it like I wasn't even in the room. That's not going where you put it. I already told you how I want this kitchen to look. I was holding the cast iron skillet my mother gave me when I got married. The one I'd used for 41 years. And my daughter-in-law, my son's wife of 14 months, was pointing at it like it was a piece of junk she'd found at a garage sale. I put it back where it belonged. I didn't say a word. That was the first time. And I told myself it was nothing. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself she was stressed, that they both were, that people say things they don't mean when they're struggling. I was very good at telling myself things back then. My name is Lorna. I'm 67 years old, and I live, or lived, depending on how you count time, in the house I shared with my husband Raymond for 38 years. Raymond passed 4 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, 8 weeks from diagnosis to the end. The kind of thing you don't see coming and can't slow down once it starts. After he was gone, the house got quiet in a way I hadn't prepared for. Not silent. Birds still came to the feeder, the furnace still clicked on in the mornings. My neighbor still mowed his lawn at 7 a.m., on Saturdays like clockwork. But the particular sound of Raymond, his coffee cup on the counter, his laugh at the evening news, the way he hummed without realizing he was doing it, that was gone. And nothing filled that. My son, Marcus. No, wait. I need a different name. My son. I'll call him by his name in a moment. My son called me every Sunday. He was good about that. He'd married a woman I'll call Serena. Not her real name, but close enough to how she carried herself. Serena was beautiful in that careful way. The kind of beautiful that takes a lot of maintenance and a lot of mirrors. She had opinions about everything, and she stated them the way some people state facts, not arguing, just declaring. My son's name is Oliver. He was 34 when this started. He'd worked in commercial real estate and done well enough for a while. But the market shifted, and a deal he'd staked a lot on fell through badly. I didn't know the details until later. He wasn't the type to come to me with bad news. Raymond had been the same way, proud in that quiet way men of a certain kind are proud. Oliver called me on a Thursday in February. It was cold, the kind of February cold that sits on the ground and doesn't move. He said Serena and he were having some financial trouble. Nothing permanent, he said. He Farina and he were having some financial trouble. Nothing permanent, he said. Just a rough patch. He said it the way you say something when you're hoping the other person will offer before you have to ask. I offered. You can both come stay here, I said, as long as you need. There was a pause that lasted just a beat too long. You sure, Mom? Of course I'm sure. This house is too big for one person anyway. That was true. 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, a yard that Raymond had tended like it was a second job. I had plenty of space, and I wanted my son close. I won't pretend otherwise. When you've lost a spouse and your children are grown and the house is that quiet, you want people in it, even if it costs something. I didn't know yet what it would cost. They arrived on a Saturday in early March with 2 cars packed full and a rented cargo van. More than I expected. Serena directed the unloading the way a general directs troops, efficiently, without sentiment. Oliver carried boxes. I made sandwiches and put on coffee and tried to make it feel like a homecoming rather than a retreat. Serena looked at the living room and said, "This furniture is really dark, isn't it?" Not a question. An observation delivered like a mild diagnosis. Raymond picked most of it, I said. She nodded and moved on to examine the guest room. Oliver squeezed my shoulder on his way past. "She's just tired," he said quietly. I believed him. That was the second time I told myself something that wasn't quite true. The first week was fine, or fine enough. We had dinner together most nights. Serena cooked twice, and she was good at it. Competent in the kitchen in a way that was admirable, even if she rearranged things while she cooked, and didn't always rearrange them back. I noticed but didn't say anything. It was a small thing. The second week she moved the photograph. There's a photo I've had on the hallway wall since 1994. Raymond and me on a bridge in Savannah, Georgia, on our 15th anniversary. We drove down there on a whim, just the 2 of us, Stayed in a little inn near the river. It's not a fancy photo. We asked a stranger to take it. But Raymond is laughing in it, really laughing, head back. And I'm looking at him instead of the camera. It's the only photo I have of him where he looks completely free. Serena had taken it down and replaced it with a large canvas print of a geometric pattern, something she'd apparently ordered online and had shipped to my address without mentioning it. The Savannah photo was leaning against the baseboard of the hallway closet. I stood there for a while. Then I picked it up, carried it to my bedroom, and hung it on the wall across from my bed, where I could see it every morning. I didn't say anything to Serena. I told myself it wasn't worth the conflict. I told myself Oliver needed peace right now. I told myself Oliver needed peace right now. I told myself these were just walls. But I knew they weren't just walls. A person always knows. By the end of April, small things had accumulated the way small things do. Quietly. Until suddenly there's so much of them you can't find the floor. Serena had her grocery list on my refrigerator. Serena had reorganized the pantry according to a system I didn't understand and wasn't consulted about. Serena had strong feelings about what streaming services should be on the main TV and had changed the login on 2 of them. Serena had invited her friend group over for a girls' afternoon that turned into the evening and then into an impromptu dinner, and I had sat in my bedroom with a cup of tea feeling like a guest in my own house. Oliver worked long hours, or said he did. I wasn't sure in retrospect how much of that was work and how much was avoidance. He was a person who dealt with conflict by being somewhere else when it happened. Raymond had said that about him once, gently, when Oliver was still in his 20s. He'll need to learn to stay in the room, Raymond had said. He never quite learned. I started keeping a notebook. It wasn't deliberate at first. I wrote things down to remember them because I'd been doing that since Raymond died. Keeping track of things. Keeping myself oriented. But then I started writing down the other things too. The pantry reorganization, the streaming passwords. The way Serena borrowed my car just for an hour and came back 3 hours later without mentioning it. The utilities Oliver said he'd start contributing to and hadn't for 3 months now. The notebook was spiral bound, the kind you get at a drugstore. Blue cover. I kept it in my nightstand. I told myself I was just keeping records, that it helped me feel less crazy. It did help, but it also showed me something I'd been trying not to see. It wasn't one thing, it was 50 things. And 50 things is a pattern. The porch was Raymond's. I want to be clear about that. He built the screen porch himself the summer before Oliver was born. Took him 3 weekends and help from his brother. It wrapped around the back of the house with the swing he'd hung from the ceiling and a weather vane he'd installed at the corner because he liked the sound of it. He sat out there every Sunday morning with his newspaper, even in the cold. Even in February, with a blanket. The porch was Raymond. In a way, nothing else in the house was quite as purely Raymond. In May, Serena decided she wanted to turn it into a home gym. She mentioned it to Oliver. Oliver mentioned it to me in the way he mentioned difficult things. Quickly, at the end of a conversation about something else, as though speed and proximity to other words might cushion the impact. Serena has this idea about the back porch, she said. She thinks we could put equipment out there, make it functional. You're not really using it. I sit out there every Sunday morning, I said. Right, but... He stopped. Started again. She already ordered some of the equipment. I looked at my son. He was 34 years old and he was standing in my kitchen, looking at the floor. Oliver, I said, your father built that porch. He didn't say anything. I am not turning your father's porch into a gym. That was the first time I said no clearly, and I want to tell you that it felt powerful, that I stood tall and it all turned around right there. But it didn't. Oliver nodded and said okay and went to talk to Serena, and I heard them in the hallway for a long time, their voices low. The equipment was sent back, but something changed after that. Serena smiled at me more thinly. Oliver started having dinner in their room some nights. Their room, which was still, technically, my guest room, though it had stopped feeling like mine at all. June was when I found the quote. I hadn't asked anyone to get quotes on anything, but I came home from my Thursday bridge club to find a man in my backyard with a clipboard and a measuring tape, examining the fence. Can I help you? I said. He introduced himself. He was from a fencing company. He said my daughter-in-law had called and was considering replacing the fence along the back of the property. Raymond and his brother had built that fence. I thanked the man, walked him to the gate, and told him we wouldn't be needing a quote. Then I went inside and sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Not crying. Not angry yet. Just sitting with the realization that had been coming for weeks, the one I'd been walking around without looking at directly. This was no longer feeling like my home. And I had let that happen step by step, telling myself each step was small. Telling myself Oliver needed me to be patient. Telling myself I was being generous by absorbing all of this, that generosity was a kind of grace. But there's a difference between generosity and erasure. And somewhere in those 4 months, I had started to disappear. The dinner party was Serena's idea. She invited 8 of her friends, couples she and Oliver knew from their life before the financial trouble. A celebration, she called it. She told me about it 3 days before it happened, the way you inform someone of a thing rather than asking them. The menu was planned. The wine was ordered. She had already moved my kitchen chairs to the garage to accommodate a rented folding table. My chairs, in my garage. I said nothing. I told myself it was one evening. I rearranged my small dining table to fit 2 extra chairs and said nothing. The night of the dinner, I came downstairs at 7:30 to get a glass of water. The kitchen had been transformed. Not unpleasantly, I'll admit. Serena had good taste, and 10 people were seated around the extended dining table with candles and cloth napkins and a centerpiece I didn't recognize. I walked through to the kitchen, got my water. Lorna. Serena's voice clear and carrying. I turned. She looked at me from the head of the table. The head of my table, in my dining room, in my house, with an expression that was patient, in the way impatience dresses itself up. "We're in the middle of dinner," she said. "Could you maybe eat in your room tonight?" Not a question. 10 people looked at me. Some looked away. I stood there for a moment. I felt my face do something I can't describe exactly. Not flinch, not crumble. Something went still. What the moment before a door closes. "Of course," I said. And I went upstairs with my glass of water. I sat on the edge of my bed. The photo of Raymond on the bridge in Savannah was across the room from me. And I looked at him, head back, laughing, completely free. And I said out loud, to no one, to him, "I think that's enough now." I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't sleep much that night. I didn't need to. By 2 in the morning I had thought it through clearly. Not in anger. The anger had burned clean through sometime around midnight and left something much cooler, much more useful. I knew what I had done wrong. I had let each thing pass because the next thing hadn't happened yet. And so there was never a moment where the full weight of all of it was visible, only the single step in front of me, which always seemed too small to fight over. That is how you lose your own house, one small step at a time, until you're eating in your bedroom. I was not going to eat in my bedroom again. Friday morning, while Oliver and Serena slept, I called my attorney. Gideon Marsh had handled Raymond's estate, and he knew me well enough to hear from my voice that this wasn't a casual call. I told him the situation in full. The utilities not paid, the unsolicited renovation consultations, the fencing quote requested without my permission, the systematic rearrangement of my home and my life. Has anything been put in writing? Any kind of formal agreement about their staying there? He asked. Nothing signed, I said. Verbal agreement only. My house, my name on the deed. Then your position is very clean, Gideon said. Legally, as the homeowner, you can ask them to vacate. Tennessee gives guests without a lease 30 days' notice. But if they've been there more than a year, it gets more complicated. We should document everything before you move. I have a notebook, I said. There was a brief pause. Good, he said. Keep it. That afternoon, while Serena was at a yoga class and Oliver was, as usual, somewhere undefined, I walked through every room in my house with my phone and photographed everything. The canvas print where my husband's photograph had been. The pantry organized according to someone else's system. The garage where my chairs still were. The back porch, which had survived. Then I called my daughter. I should have mentioned her sooner. Her name is Noelle, and she lives in Chattanooga, and she had been telling me for 4 months to do exactly what I was now doing. She picked up on the second ring. Mom, she said, when I'd explained. Finally, don't. I said, and she laughed, and then I laughed too, and that was the first time I'd laughed in what felt like a very long season. I gave them notice on a Saturday morning. I made coffee first. I set 3 cups on the table. I waited until they were both seated, Oliver in his usual spot, Serena across from him with her phone face down on the table, which I had noticed she did when she wanted to appear present without actually being present. I need to talk to both of you, I said. I kept my voice level. I had practiced the night before, not the words exactly, but the tone, calm and clear and final. I told them I was grateful they'd had a place to land when they needed one. I told them I had been happy to help, and I told them that the arrangement had reached its end, and I was asking them to begin looking for their own place, and that I would need them fully moved out within 60 days. Oliver looked at the table. Serena looked at me. 60 days, she said. 60 days, I said. We don't have, she started. Serena. My voice was still level. I'm not asking for your financial situation. I'm informing you of the timeline. 60 days is generous and it's final. Oliver said very quietly, Mom, Oliver, I said, I love you, and I need my home back. He nodded. He couldn't quite look at me, but he nodded. They began packing the following week. It was not graceful. There were arguments I could hear through the ceiling late at night. Not the words, just the shapes of them. Serena's voice sharp and Oliver's lower and steadying. I did not insert myself. I kept to my part of the house and let them navigate their own marriage. Noel came up from Chattanooga the 3rd weekend to help me with the practical things, changing the streaming passwords, going through the pantry and putting it back the way I understood it, returning my kitchen chairs from the garage to the dining room where they had always been. When she carried them back in, she set them down and looked around the room. It still looks like your house, she said. It is my house, I said. She hugged me and I let her. They were gone in 52 days. Oliver loaded the last box while Serena waited in the car. He came back inside, just him, just the 2 of us, and stood in the kitchen that had been his father's kitchen, and his growing up kitchen, and now was mine alone again. I'm sorry, Mom, he said. He said it simply, without a preamble or an explanation, which was the only way I would have been able to hear it. I know, I said. I should have said something. A long time before now. Yes, I said, you should have. He hugged me. I hugged him because. That's the whole truth of it. There are things to be angry about, and there is still love, and they don't cancel each other out. They just exist side by side, and you hold both. He called the following Sunday. I'll be honest, I was relieved when the phone rang. I went out to the back porch on the Sunday after they left, with my coffee and the newspaper I still take in print, because some habits I have no interest in changing. It was July by then? Humid the way Tennessee July is humid. But there was a breeze moving through the screens, and the weather vane Raymond installed at the corner was turning slowly, making its small sound. I sat in the swing he'd hung from the ceiling. I held my coffee with both hands. I'm not the kind of person who gives speeches or looks for lessons in suffering. Raymond used to say that wisdom isn't what happens to you. It's what you stop tolerating. I thought about that a lot in those 52 days. I thought about all the small moments where I'd looked away from what was happening and decided the peace was worth more than the truth. It isn't, always. Sometimes the truth is worth more than the peace. I had a home. I'd given it away room by room, step by step, until I was eating in my bedroom with a glass of water while someone else sat at the head of my table. I do not intend to do that again, not with anyone. The weather vane turned. The breeze came through. I finished my coffee and went back inside, into my kitchen, into my house, and started my Sunday the way I intended to spend the rest of my Sundays, on my own terms, in my own home, as myself.